TO Blaze.
Hey there, this is Tio bringing another Kerbal Space Program video from my Astrophobia Career Playthrough. This is part 2. I'm going to pick up where I left off last time. And in the last video, I sent a little flyby to the Mun. And now it's time to actually try to put something in orbit. So now that I know my little probe core can survive, I'm going to go ahead and add a Science Junior, which is going to encourage me to try to add a heat shield this time. I had a lot of trouble getting into the atmosphere the last time I went to the Mun, because coming back to Kerbin, got a lot more speed, and that re-entry can be a doozy. So here I'm just going to modify my Mun Explorer. It's not a lander, it's not a satellite. It's just going to well, in this case, it actually will be a satellite. I'm going to orbit the Mun, I believe. I had a flyby last time. Time to actually put something in orbit, and I'm going to have a contract to do just that. So it's going to be very similar to the last part of part 1. Nothing to see here, just a normal, trying to do as efficient ascent as I can. And deciding to change my engine. I've got the new Terrier unlocked, so let's go ahead and use that. In this video, I'm going to start on tier 4 of my tech tree and finish off tier 3. So got my Terrier, like I just said, and that's going to be a much more efficient vacuum stage engine. Don't need my fairing anymore. I'm out of the atmosphere. Go ahead and open up my antennas and try to get this little puppy into orbit. One thing I'll need very soon is some, I'm sorry if you can hear my chair squeak. I'm going to need some relays around Kerbin for sure. Not going to be able to get by much longer, especially as I go further out. I need to be reliably connected to the KSC when I get these maneuvers, like around the Mun, for instance. So don't usually approach on the far side, so let's go ahead and get it on the correct side, so to say, and get my encounter with the Mun. Gather some science. There, got my contract, getting some credits, and gathering science. You have to be fairly close to the surface of the Mun for it to count as space over the Mun. Otherwise, it's high over the Mun, which I've already gotten my flyby. So now it's time to return to Kerbin. Got my heat shield this time. That wasn't a very efficient burn, as you can see, but I've got plenty of fuel on this last little stage. So just running my science unit. Actually, I think I've already run it, so I can only run it one time, and I saved it for the Mun. So go ahead and tuck everything in. Got my heat shield protecting me this time. And that's going to be it for my second mission to the Mun, my first orbit. And I'm ready to get back to my science facility, research facility, and it unlocks some new parts. Also going to see what kind of contracts it's going to give me. So getting some funds for recovering, not a whole lot of funds, getting a lot of science, nice. So let's go see what kind of contracts I can do. So next is going to be landing on the Mun. Fortunately, I can't plant any flags, but that'll be all right. Let's see. Like I said, I've finished the tech tree tier 3. I'm moving on to 4. So now it's time to build a lander. So with a lander, I'm going to want some relays. So I'll probably snap on a couple little relays to send to the Mun. Basically going to keep the rest of the parts as I have them here. I'm going to need a means of returning to Kerbin, so that stays the same. My Science Junior unit is going to be below. And why is that? I don't know that I can transfer my Science Junior data. I can, I'm sorry. I've got my my science collection. I forget the name of the little part on the top there, and I can collect all science from that. I don't need a Kerbinaut. So my Science Junior is going to be expendable on the lander portion, which is just going to include the 4 landing legs, a good chunk of fuel, and a nice efficient engine like another Terrier. So I do need more fuel on the return stage in case my lander is not enough to get me back off the surface of the Mun and back into orbit of the Mun. So that's why I think I added a few more tanks of fuel on the return stage. So here you see me building a couple little relays. They're going to piggyback with the mothership into the orbit of the Mun, and I'll just build a little half-ass, for lack of a better term, relay network around the Mun. That should allow me to maintain connection back to Kerbin at least most of the time. Not all the time, but it'll get the job done. And I'm going to add a few liquid fuel tanks. I think I have the fuel lines now. I can cross feed. Let's see if I'm going to add some fuel lines. I think I researched those. So I'm going to put this thing in the orbit of Kerbin and decide if I'm going to go all the way to the Mun, or at some point I will need to set up that Kerbin relay network. So just playing with the color schemes, because why not? Looks like I don't have the fuel lines, so I'm just adding a couple liquid fuel boosters, because I've got a lot more mass this time. I've got the added fuel from the lander, I've got the 2 little satellites. I want to make sure they're not clipping into anything so I can release them. Checking my staging. Don't forget to adjust your staging. It can be tricky when you got other little crafts, like the little satellites that I'm including. Now it's time to light the candle, get this thing in orbit, and go to the Mun. Drop my SRBs and throttle down a little bit, trying to be efficient, but I'm not being very efficient. Apoapsis is already around 90. Yeah, that wasn't very efficient, but got plenty of fuel in the first couple stages. I'm going to circularize with my Terrier. And I believe that was meant to be my transfer stage. Yep, definitely. So it's going to be close with the amount of fuel that we got to get all the way to the Mun and circularize. If I need to ditch some weight, I can. And now's about the time where I'm thinking I need to set up my Kerbin relays. So I'm going to go ahead and adjust my relays and get the network better situated for my trip to the Mun. I don't want any blackouts where I can't control my craft. The last thing you want is to get to your periapsis at the Mun encounter and you have 0 connectivity back to Kerbin. So just adjusting little relays that I had set up before. I like to have my inclination with Kerbin down to 0, just to keep everything uniform. And I'm just kind of eyeballing the position of the satellites as best I can. So long as their orbit is perfectly circular, it's not a huge deal if they're not all equidistance from each other. So doing a little fine tuning. I'll cover this in my relay satellite relay network video. I didn't do a great job in that video because I'm having the same trouble I'm having right here. I'm not using any RCS thrusters, which would be really handy right about now. It's a super tedious process of positioning the satellites and getting in the orbit that you want. So do need a couple more satellites to complete my network. So now that I can handle more parts, I can handle more mass. Gonna add some blinky lights. Why not? Makes the satellite look a little cooler. I'm also gonna add some smaller engines so that I can really feather in thrust and not have to worry about overshooting each of my burns. And why not slap a little antenna on top? Still a relatively cheap relay if you ask me. 13,000 credits. The nice thing about putting a satellite like this in orbit is you have connection back to the KSC for several minutes after the launch. It's not until you go a good ways into your orbit that you start to lose connectivity. So you can circularize, and I've already got another relay or 2 to help me maintain connectivity. So there's my little ant. I think it's called the ant. I'm going to change my light settings for a second so you can check out the blinky light. You can set those lights to always on, to blinking. You can change the duration of the blink. You can change the color. Relatively new part, fun to play with. There you see me just trying to find the right spot to change my inclination so I can match my other satellite. I don't have to set the other satellite as a target because I'm using Kerbin is my reference point, so my inclination is 0. If you look real close, every time I whip around the planet, you can see my connectivity gets lost every now and then because my orbit's not circular yet, and my network's not set up. So this is the slightly more tedious part, I promise. The videos start to get super interesting once I've unlocked the mobile processing lab. So for those of you that have tried to play through science mode or career mode, mobile processing labs are super handy for converting experiments into science points, and you can visit nearby places like Minmus and the Mun and Duna and those kind of places more easily and get a lot more science points in the long run with the mobile processing lab. So once I start using the lab, which has to be on the surface of Kerbin, this playthrough gets way more interesting. I still have fun setting up relays, and this is still a very unique challenge. I've really never set up a relay network using these little launch vehicles, these single satellite launchers. Usually send out a mothership with multiple satellites and set up a network that way. So this little individual satellite launch is kind of fun. I've never done it this way. Another reason to try something new with Kerbal. If you've never done science mode, you should try science mode. If you've never done career mode, you should give that a shot. And I'm trying career mode with some self-induced restrictions. I did notice, definitely into this video part 2 and in the later parts, that career mode may not have been the best choice. Science mode would have probably been just as challenging and as fun. The issue with career mode is you don't get a lot of credits for doing some of these things that I'm having to do. Like I have to set up a relay network. The game doesn't care that I've set up a relay network. I don't get any pat on the back, any credits for this, and each of these satellites is not free. So in science mode, it'd be way more forgiving than in career mode. Another issue with career mode is a bunch of the contracts are junk. Can't do them because they break the rules. I am considering the rescue missions, however. In my mind, if there are some helpless, sad Kerbals stuck in space and they need to be rescued, well, it totally fits with the theme of the video to go and rescue them. But I'm not certain if I'll do that, and if I will do that, do I need to self-impose some restrictions on that? Like, are they allowed to travel anywhere between their craft and the KSC? Are they allowed to do anything like research and so forth? But for now, I'm not accepting any of the research missions just because I feel like they break the rules of the challenge. So made my approach with the Mun. Oh, reload. Broke a satellite there. Gotta ditch my satellites. Have enough fuel to transfer to the Mun. Have enough fuel to circularize. Hopefully. So I didn't quick save when I got to the Mun, unfortunately. So I'm having to redo my maneuver. Get my periapsis somewhere decent. And let's see. Can I circularize? Yep, good. With my transfer stage, wasn't sure if I'd have enough fuel, but got plenty of fuel. So get myself into my desired orbit, ditch my satellites. I'll probably set up my Mun relays in a later video, but for now they're chilling in orbit of the Mun. I'll have them if I need them. So long as I can get my lander down to the surface, back to Kerbin, I'll be happy. This would be quite a good haul of science points, so I can unlock some new parts. This would be my 3rd Mun mission. Guess I'm gonna go ahead and circularize my satellite just a little, just so the orbit's pretty. I don't like leaving ugly elliptical orbits around if I can avoid it. Circular just looks better in my mind. These are some pretty simple but pretty reliable relay designs. I've got 4 of those. Antennas, got plenty of battery. This is overkill for the Mun, but they're relatively small. They look cool. I'll go ahead and ditch my lander and start burning retrograde. There we go. Got my periapsis nice and low. I'm trying to pick a spot where I'll have connection back to Kerbin when I land. So I'm picking the bright side of the Mun in this case. So I'm not going to use my relays to land. I'll have line of sight with Kerbin. Here you see my approach. I can't use first person view, which doesn't make landing easier, just makes landing more fun. I also can't lock retrograde with this probe core, unfortunately. So nice touchdown. Run my science experiments. I can't bind those, unfortunately, to an action group just yet because I don't have that ability in this career mode. Got enough fuel to get off the surface, and I'll finish circularizing. My engines were pointing in the opposite direction, so I had to adjust the direction on my probe core there. Now it's time to get my rendezvous with Kerbin. Go back to Kerbin and turn in all these experiments for some science points. Simple little burn. Try to get into the atmosphere around 30 to 40,000 meters, which is what I got. Got my heat shield now. The days of Sans heat shield are over. I'm going to go ahead and use the rest of my fuel, or at least a little bit of it, and re-enter the atmosphere around 3,000 meters per second, nice and fast. Looks like I'm going to get a splashdown. Use up the rest of my fuel. Why not? Makes the craft a little lighter when it hits the water. I can ditch my heat shield, which I just did. Nothing exploded. Nice. Alright, so let's turn all that science in, and what else can we get? Ooh, the choices. I know I'll probably head back to the Mun. Sometimes these Mun missions can be a little repetitive, but they're worth a lot of science at the beginning when you don't have a whole lot of parts. I'll try to keep it interesting and not go back to the Mun too many times, not go back to Minmus too many times, because Minmus is not all that different from going to the Mun. It's definitely going to be more science, but while I'm in the mood, I'm just going to upgrade my vehicle a little bit, just a hair, and it's time to go back to the Mun and get even more science. I've got my field transfer lines now, so I can do that wonderful asparagus staging on stage 1, where there's 6 boosters around the core, and 2 of the boosters feed into the adjacent 2, and those 2 feed into the adjacent 2, and the last the last pair feeds into the core. So 2 will empty first, and then the next 2 will empty, and then the next 2 will empty. And that's the best shedding of mass that you can get. So it's going to be the most efficient option that I currently have. I'm also going to change my antenna. Something that looks kind of cool. Add some stretch just for looks. That's a way I could definitely maintain my connectivity back to Kerbin. Trying to experiment with different looks. Other than that, the lander is roughly the same. This will be my 4th mission to the Mun, 2nd landing on the Mun, and flipping through my notes. That'll be the last time I go to the Mun, I think. I've gone to the Mun several times in my other career mode playthrough. It's fun. It doesn't lose its fun factor for me because it's nostalgic, and it's relatively quick and easy. And some of the other missions, like going to Elu, going to Jewel, going to some of the other planets, they can be more tedious to plan and execute. So for the sake of entertainment, this will be my last trip to the Mun. You guys have seen me do this more than once by now. So I'm just going to get some more science on this mission. I'll launch these other relays. I don't think I'll set up the relays because I don't plan to go back to the Mun anytime soon, but they'll be there should I need them. Plenty of fuel in that core stage. Again, that asparagus was so much more efficient. Oof, wasn't paying attention. Way overshot my maneuver, and I was gonna leave Kerbin's sphere of influence. So all that efficiency was just wasted. But no worries. I know I've got plenty of fuel to get back to Kerbin. So I went from 2 satellites down to 1. So I'm only leaving 1 little relay. That'll make a nice network of 3 should I ever decide to set them up. I'm gonna use the rest of my transfer fuel to reduce my orbit and get pretty close to the surface. But before I get there, I'll definitely want to ditch. Yeah, I'll go ahead and ditch it there. So already going pretty slow. Usually you're getting close to the surface, you're still going 500 meters per second or so, but burned up the rest of that fuel just because I had it to use, you know. Not gonna waste perfectly good fuel. So nice little touchdown, run my science experiments. Cannot wait to unlock action groups. It's so tedious. You can bind all the experiments to one action group. You can bind the experiment storage unit to another action group, and it makes it so much faster to run the experiments. Get my return trip back to Kerbin into the atmosphere. Still lots of fuel. Hardly used fuel in my final stage. Just overkill on the design. It's not a lot of mass, so not too costly. Probably could have saved a couple thousand credits, which is not an awful lot. And there you see my landing. This is the end of part 2 of my video. Hope you're enjoying the series so far. If you do, hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you again soon.